I'd like to introduce Laura Abrams, which I'm sure everybody in the room knows, who's going to give us a history of Bartlett Greenhouse.
Thank you.
Laura.
Hi. Well, she just said, I'm Laura Abrams. I'm one of John Bartlett's daughters. One of his other daughters, Martha Keithley, is here, and his wife, Dorothy Bartlett, and two of his grandchildren, Beth McCarthy and Fred McCarthy, are here, and they are part of the fourth generation. So it's a little bit of the history of Bartlett Greenhouses and where we originated. As you can see, we started in 1911, and this is our newest logo for the company. And he originally came to Sudbury and started the greenhouse business in 1911. This is a house on Route 20. This is where James and my grandmother Felina raised their family of 5. And anybody driving down Route 20 knows that the old family home is still there. This is what they started with. When James came to Sudbury, he bought these rundown greenhouses right along Route 20. They were old glass greenhouses, as all the greenhouses were back in those days. When he first came out, the greenhouses had its own water storage tank for watering all the plants and delivering the plants to the market. This is a picture of James in one of the original greenhouses when he bought them in 1911, and the greenhouses were originally a cut flower carnation business. James also had a fascination with cactuses, and so he had quite a collection of very large cactus, as you can see in the picture. Some of them are quite tall, and others are more down on the benches, but he had quite an extensive cactus collection when he started.
And he lost them all one winter night when the power went off. It's a shame.
Right, so all the cactus ended up freezing.
Yeah.
How do they keep the greenhouses warm?
Question was, how did they keep the greenhouses warm?
We had coal furnace boilers, and they evidently stopped, and he didn't realize it. He lost all his collection.
This is a picture of Dorothy Bartlett in 1950. As some of you know, if you had read the article in the paper this past week, my mother was part of the cutting family, and her father was one of the original pig farmers in Sudbury. And let's see, we're about 7th generation, so you were 5th generation, 6th generation? She's part of the original Bent family in Sudbury, as Carol would know.
Where's your hat?
Where's your hat?
Hat?
Oh, in the picture. So she was planting seedlings back then. My mother was a graduate of BU in music, and this is what she ended up doing. Okay. This is a picture of my father, John, and my brother, Pike. We couldn't leave him out of the pictures. My brother actually runs a friendship trap company. He builds lobster traps in Maine, and now he's also has another business, which is Bartlett Bench and Wire, so he makes benches for greenhouses and sells them across the country now. So he has stayed with the connections of the greenhouse industry, but just not in Sudbury. So this is kind of, you know, they asked, what was it like when you grew up? Well, we grew up in the greenhouses. Wasn't that bad. He looks happy. This is a picture of John in one of his greenhouses. My father held one of the first patents on the poly-covered greenhouses, the plastic-covered greenhouses. He worked with Lord and Burnham to design those and patent them. So we eventually converted the glass greenhouses over to the plastic greenhouses. This is a picture of my father picking out plants, getting them ready for market. My father was an engineer by trade. He didn't know anything about growing plants when he first decided to come into this business. When he got out of the service, my grandmother had originally rented the greenhouses out while the boys were in the service after my grandfather died. And when he got out of the service, he decided to come back to town and give it a go. And so they originally started with the carnations and the tomatoes, and as my mother pointed out, that the way they got into the geranium business is a greenhouse grower in Framingham was getting a load of unrooted geranium cuttings in from France and didn't have any place to grow them, and asked them if they would grow them on for him. And after that, she says that's just what they decided to keep doing. They must have done a good job with the first crop. But my father was an engineer, and one of the things that he liked to do was he liked to design and invent and modernize the way to do business. And one of the things that he did was he created this monorail which went down all of the greenhouses with this dolly system that saved people all the time in walking and carrying all the plants, where you could just move them all on this dolly system up and down the greenhouses. This is another one of his inventions, which was basically, this was used to carry the soil in and out of the greenhouses. These are all the old wooden flats that were made in Sudbury by a gentleman up on Peakham Road. That's all he did. He lived in a small house up on Peakham Road, and he just kept making all these wooden flats for us. I remember going up there quite a bit as a kid. But this is how they build all the flats for planting. This is a picture of a gentleman that worked for us ever since before I was born, I think. And he's picking out, again, in the old wooden flats that were pretty heavy at that time. That's Cliff Newman, who lived on Horse Pond Road. This is Natalie Eaton. Natalie, I think most of you, some of you probably know Natalie. She still lives in Sudbury, up off of Concord Road. But Natalie did all of the culturing in our one small, it was about a 50-foot glass greenhouses, where she did all the culturing to make sure that the plants were clean. And she also did a lot of our breeding, coming up with new varieties of geraniums. This is Natalie in a small greenhouse, doing breeding, coming up with all the new colors. This is a picture of the original greenhouses. This here is Route 20 over on the side. The greenhouses came all the way up right to the edge of Route 20. These were the original glass greenhouses. The farmhouse is over on the left, and my parents' house is over on the right-hand side. And this is when we used to do a little bit of retail business. We would just sell them right to customers right off the street. Mm-hmm.
One day, this limousine stopped out. Oh, do I have to talk in that? Oh.
No, you don't have to talk
Oh.
in that. You can just keep
A
talking.
limousine stopped out front, and this man came in, and he had Cardinal Cushing with him, and the Cardinal wanted to know if we had a red geranium that matched his robe. I was quite startled. We didn't have one this color. He was going up to the Davis Turkey Farm. I don't know if anyone knew that. He evidently knew Pat Davis very well, so... But that was kind of an intriguing experience.
Laura, what year was that?
The year of this was probably around well, I know it was still there in 1956 to 1960 or so. So it was there when I was a kid. It was there when when Grandpa originally bought it.
Well, they used to wait.
We used to wait for the bus out there. So we had our own bus stop. And Martha said that she didn't remember.
I remember it. I remember the glass entryway there to the glass houses, probably first or second grade. That would have been in the early 60s, 64, somewhere in there.
So that's about the time period of when all of that started to end. This is a picture of the old glass greenhouses, still watering all of the geraniums in the old wooden flats. This is still looking out towards the east. The stand would be over in this area, and this is some of the petunias that are ready for sale in May. Again, picking out the petunias. This is my grandmother, Felina, and she used to always come out and walk, right up until she passed away. She was 91 when she passed away. And she would come out and get her exercise every day. People nowadays go and they walk around the mall. She would come out and walk around the greenhouses all the time. because the greenhouses then, if you can visualize where the old farmhouse is on Route 20 and where the beige colonial, where my parents were and where I grew up on the other side, these greenhouses almost connected the two houses, so she didn't have far to go in the winter to get out and just come walk around the greenhouses all the time and get her exercises. She'd walk and she'd just watch everybody work and stroll around and stayed in shape. This is my father in probably the first original office space that was in the greenhouse. He used to spend hours out there, forever. Again, this is Ralph Stone in the background. Many of you know the Stone family, which has the farm next door to us.
This is Bill Stone's father.
That was Bill Stone's brother. This is how we used to grow all of our stock geraniums, and all of these wooden, we used to call them troughs. And so we would plant up all of the geraniums, and we would use these to take cuttings off of all winter long, so that we would have the rooted geranium cuttings. So we would take all of the cuttings off the stock plants and stick them and root them and sell them on during the winter. When it came springtime, we would dump all of these, and I'll tell you, one of the things that we always used to do is, I don't know if Martha remembers doing this, but these made a huge pile of building blocks out back when they were done, and we used to have the greatest forts out in those. Sometimes I wonder why we're still alive, but... just more growing of geraniums. Back to the wooden flats. These wooden flats we used to get, because we all had jobs when we were little too. These wooden flats, instead of having pots in them, we used to get these, they almost looked like shingles. They were folded flat, and then you kind of squeezed them and they opened up, and there was no bottom on them, and they were just these cylinders that you just stuck in the flats, and it made a dozen, and then they just filled them all with soil, stuck the plants in those, and that's what we used to ship in, you know. And what's strange is from that you go to the plastic pots, and now everybody wants to go back into more of the organic growing, and so people are going back to now peat pots, bottomless peat pots, like that is the new thing, which everything just comes around again. I got to tell you, we've racked our brains for I don't know how long trying to figure out this is. It's not me because I was too young, and my mother says it's not her, so we haven't figured out what employee this is. But this is one of the first plastic greenhouses that was put up, again with a small dolly system in it, and picking out the geraniums in May. What could be better than running around on a dolly? You know, if it's not good for shipping plants, it's good for keeping track of where the kids are. So this is how we kind of grew up, and you just kind of rode around the greenhouses on that all day, and everybody knew where you were. But I don't think we got to do it as much as Martha did. But as you can see now, I don't know if you can tell, but we've gone from the heavy wooden flats to then there were cardboard boxes, and these would all come flat, and we had this huge stapler that you would just stomp on, and we'd fold all these boxes, and I don't know how many times Pike probably stapled his thumb, but so we kind of lightened things up when we got to the cardboard boxes. This is Dottie out taking cuttings in the greenhouses, still back to the old wooden troughs. This is also in the new greenhouses, the poly-covered greenhouses that I was telling you about. So this is, you know, kind of when we started tearing down the glass greenhouses and started putting up all the poly-covered. As you can see now, we've gone into plastic trays. You know, so we've gone from the wood to the cardboard, now to the plastic. We're still growing on some of the old wooden benches at this point, but this is kind of like what the greenhouses look like, you know, right before we get into the peak shipping during the end of May. We used to mix our own soil, so this is a big old cement mixer where we would sterilize all the soil and we would make our own blend. And we'd put it on this conveyor belt, which will go up and show you the potting system that we used to use.
When we use that with the soil, we sterilized it mixed with the sand and all, and it would be all sterilized, and then we'd fill the pots with it. And one day I was planting, a Timex watch went through the whole procedure, and it was still running.
This is when we, this is back again in the early stages, planting in the wooden boxes. More of just filling by hand. So that conveyor belt would come up, and this was the old potting wheel. And when we would get behind, we'd stay, into the evening. People would just keep putting pots in one side. The soil would come down, fill the pots. It would come across. It would scrape off any excess, and you would take the pots out and put them in the trays. So this was part of our first automation. John used to always, be out there timing us to see how fast we could get that wheel going without jamming it. And this is a more modern conveyor system now, where now we have everything stored overhead. Everything comes down into a hopper, comes down, and we can fill a whole flat of trays at a time, and the trays fill and come off, and they go onto a pallet, and we move them that way. This is in the early 60s. This is one of the biggest expansions. This is after the glass greenhouses came down in the front, and we started building towards the back. So this was, building the whole north range going out, which you'll be able to see when we get to the aerial shot. This is the old-fashioned way of leveling the ground. There's that woman again. We don't know who she is, but this is a different type of dolly system. It didn't last too long because it took, as you can see, she's up trying to push that down by herself, but it really took two people to push that down. This is the building of some of the original benches in the new range. Everything was pretty much cinder blocks, and the benches on top of that. When you think about the greenhouses, I mean, it's everything could come down tomorrow. I mean, it's all pretty portable. That there isn't a lot to, there aren't cement floors all through it. There's still a lot of ground that, all the paths are still ground, and there isn't much that it wouldn't be hard to take it all down and move it. Again, this is Cliff Newman taking cuttings. This is the newer dolly systems. We've gotten rid of the wood and made them metal. They last a lot longer this way. As you can see in the back, this is fairly current. This is what we root geraniums in. These are 52 plug trays, and they have peat pellets in them. And this is what we stick the cuttings in to root them that we ship across the country now. Just again, showing the way that we move the dollies. Here you can see that there are two lined up. A person can move 3 or 4 of these dollies at a time. And there's a dozen geraniums on each dolly. These are some impatiens ready for spring crop, getting ready to go to market. This is Dottie with her granddaughter Amy, my other daughter. And then, of course, we get to the fire. Everybody pretty much knows about the fire in 1991. If you've been in Sudbury long enough, I think we tied up the town for a day or two with this fiasco. Pretty much shut everything down. But, this is kind of, what the greenhouses look like after the fact. Kind of mulling it all over. This is really about a day or two after the fire that we had the equipment right in there, and just getting ready to clean it all up and figure out how to rebuild at this point. As you can see, we'll be able to show you on the last aerial shot. I'll point out where we are. But this is basically, as you can see, there was what we call a head house going right down the center here. That had an old wooden roof on it, and basically, all of that burned. But as you can see, looking down in, that the poly-covered greenhouses kind of extinguished themselves. And you can see that there are still plants in the back. You know, it burned about 25 feet into the greenhouses. Just a pile of rubble. You can see the different greenhouses going off in this direction. What remains of the office? This is Chief Dunn, which many of you remember. But it's kind of like, you know, making sure all those papers either burned or were out. That was fun. This is the north section that you saw. That was the section that we were building earlier. And that's what it looked like after the fire. And as John used to say, you know, you have to laugh about everything. So he's just like, well, this is what it is, you know. Let's move on. This is where you can see that this is where the whole head house is. And you can see that the greenhouses remained on this side and the greenhouses remained on that side, and everything that was connecting them is what burned. This is after all the debris has been removed and just getting ready to rebuild. Of course, this time we rebuilt in steel. Temporary office. This is actually where our swimming pool was when we were growing up. This is in the back section of my parents' house. And within a couple days, we had planks covered all over it, plywood on top of that. Throw down an old carpet. Here's some old of the file cabinets that burned up, an old plank, and all the dirty burnt records, and get a computer and you're back in business. As you can see, you know, you make do. You know, still laughing about it. This is our lab greenhouses after the fire. The plants pretty much completely burned. And then, you know, it wasn't our top priority. We didn't have time to just, you know, go out and get all of this dumped and start over. And so we just left them. And after the fire, there were several days of rain. And as you can see, even though there's nothing left of the plants, we'll get to the next slide, they all start growing back. And the only bad part is we couldn't really remember what all the varieties were because all the labels and everything burnt. So eventually, we just had to let them all flower again. These are the new lab greenhouses after we recovered and repaired all of the lab greenhouses that had burnt. In the last couple of years, we have now added on 4 more newer greenhouses. So now we have a lot of the modern technologies now in the lab greenhouses. This is one of the ladies that works in the lab, and this is where she's doing some of the culturing to make sure that all the geraniums are clean. In 2001, we started building. I think in about the year 2000, we decided to, you know, we had 5 acres of greenhouses at that point, and we had a lot of discussion as to, you know, whether or not we just kind of, you know, stayed at a nice plateau where, you know, everything was going on, you know, business was doing well, and you know, we need to decide whether it was time to take the next step forward or just stay at where we were. And there was a trade show out in Worcester that's every other year for the greenhouse industry in New England. And there was this young man there from this Westbrook Greenhouses up in Canada. And he was a young kid, he's younger than me, and he just, you know, was kind of talking to us all about, you know, these greenhouses and what an improvement it would be. And if we're thinking about building greenhouses, you know, we really needed to be able to sit down and talk to him. And it was the last day of the trade show, and everybody gets tired. And we said, well, we'll give you one shot at John. And Dad never let any salesman in and out without a lot of slack. He always gave salesmen a hard time. I think the one that I'll always remember is when a guy came in to sell him yardsticks, and the guy couldn't tell him how big a yardstick was. And boy, that guy was out of there the fastest I ever saw anybody get thrown out. But this young kid came in, and he was just, you know, as I said, it was like 6 o'clock, the last day of the trade show. We took him back, said, you know, we'll let you have a chance at John. And our manager and and I sat down with him, and Dad would start asking him questions about snow load, how much snow would it hold, and, you know, all the mechanisms, and, you know, the venting system and the fans and everything that goes along with it. And the guy just had all the answers for Dad, and he would just get out his engineering book and say, he's right, you know, and it was like, for the cost of the square footage, he was like, okay, we can buy greenhouses from this guy. He's a pretty honest kid, and he knows his stuff. Because, you know, we've been known for doing everything ourselves. We put up these greenhouses ourselves, but we've always built everything ourselves, and that was the way Dad was, and it was one way to get ahead in this business. So this guy really impressed him, so we were able to buy 2 more acres of greenhouses from this guy. This is what we've just finished doing. This is a whole section right out of the middle of the greenhouses. You see, back in the 60s, we were building the greenhouses. So now what we've done is we've taken the middle section, the oldest section of the range, and we tore that down, and we've just rebuilt this. So this is right after we took down the middle section. This is the newest back 2 acres that we've put in of the new Westbrook greenhouses. And we'll go to the next slide. And this is after we've just finished putting these up. So we have a whole new section right in the middle of modern greenhouses. Some of the things that we work on is, we're a breeder of geraniums, and so it's something that we're always working on. It's what Martha does out in the lab, and Beth's been helping her now, is we're always trying to come up with, new varieties of geraniums. What is the public looking for? They're looking for new reds. Everybody says they want to know a true red, so if anybody out there knows what it is, let me know. Because we want to know, because no matter what we come up with for a red, nobody ever thinks it's a true red. I don't know, something about reds. They don't ask it about any other color. But these are some of the newest ones we're working on. And what we do is we start out with new seedlings, and these are from our 06. These numbers represent 06 is from our 2006 breeding program. The 04s are from our 2004 breeding program. And what we do is we trial these varieties for a couple years. We start out with, I think we have about 500 new seedlings this year just to evaluate. And what we'll do is we'll slowly watch these. One of the things that we watch for first is, how fast do they flower? The ones that are the last to flower we usually throw away first because they're going to be too late for the consumer, they're going to be too late for growers. And then we look at colors. What's a color that we don't have? What's a new characteristic about it? Sometimes we'll have an improved variety, like if we have a really nice white. We have a really nice white Puritan, but it had a little tinge of pink to it, and so after another year or two of breeding, we came out with one that was an improved. So rather than changing the name, that was called Puritan, and then when we improved it, we call it Puritan 2, not to confuse the trade with, a new variety. So, we're looking for new colors. We're looking for a good zoning in the plant leaves. We're looking for dark foliage geraniums, anything new. We're also breeding our head grower, who's been with us 30 years, I think, at this point. She's been breeding Calibrachoa petunias. So these are some of her new varieties of petunias. This is out in this is out picking out for the May crop. These are our 10-inch geraniums out here. And most of you can tell that this is our trial garden. This is where we evaluate a lot of those new seedlings. So what we do is we select out the ones that we think have merit, and we put them out in the trial garden, and we put the geraniums that we're currently selling out in the trial garden so we can compare them to see if there's something new, something that's better than what we're currently growing. We try to arrange them by color to see, to find the differences in the shades, and then we evaluate them all year. We actually have people that come in and ask if they can buy them. I guess they think we're just going to dig them up, and so I don't know. But this is where we trial our varieties.
Didn't you try hydroponics one year? Because I remember driving by and seeing it looked like they were growing in water.
Outside? No, the question was whether or not we do hydroponics. We don't do hydroponics.
Maybe the troughs we used to.
Oh, yes, we did have them in a raised bed in the troughs out there. Yes, now we put them in the ground because growing them in the ground is really more, you know, what the consumer's doing. They're growing them in the ground. They're not growing them in raised beds. This is a shot of the 7 acres of greenhouses. This is the new 2 acres that we were talking about that we started in 2001. This is the section that we've just replaced right here in the middle. This is the whole section that burnt the most. This is the head house for the front, all the offices, all the warehouse and the boiler room. This is where, this isn't a current picture. There are 5 greenhouses here. There's now another 4 of the new Westbrook greenhouses over here. As I was pointing out, you know, my grandmother's house was on the left over there, and my parents in the middle. And currently now we've added some more hoop houses out here for growing for the spring crop. That's Stone's Farm over on the further side. And we most all owe everything to him, whose hard work is where what's been my mother's, what's put us where we are today. Is that's where he spent his life, out in the greenhouses. Any questions? I think if you'd like, my sister could tell you more about the breeding and what goes on out in the lab greenhouses, if people have an interest in that, or just any other history. My mother's full of history of Sudbury.
Do you know if anybody has ever tried to create a green geranium that had a nice
Smell.
scent?
Geraniums really don't have a lot of fragrance. I think some of the Martha Washingtons or the scented geraniums that are more of the perennials that are out in the garden have more of a scent. Geraniums really don't have a lot of,
No, I wonder if anybody tried.
just the scented geraniums. Not the zonal geraniums.
How many plants do you put out a year? Does it vary, or?
In the winter, we sell the rooted and unrooted geranium cuttings, and we sell about 3 million of those during the winter. And finished crop, we sell about 550,000 4-inch geraniums, and then we sell about another 400,000 between our 6-inch geraniums, our 7.5-inch geraniums, our 10-inch geraniums. We also sell a full line of, you know, your impatiens, your petunias, your marigolds, argyratum, dusty miller. We do a complete line in the spring for all the garden centers and landscapers and commercial buildings, along with, you know, hangers and combination plants, cemetery pans. But that's just the geranium count. So we pretty much sell that 7 acres in the spring. That's all finished product. And we pretty much sell that whole 7 acres out in about less than 2 months, primarily North Shore, South Shore, Cape, and locally. Some to Connecticut, some to New Hampshire, you know. But we pretty much sell that out locally on the east coast of Massachusetts in a short period of time.
So you could sell more.
Hence the hoop houses in the back. More, everybody needs to. We don't use the whole 7 acres during the winter. We don't need that much space for propagating the rooted cuttings and the unrooted cuttings because they don't take that much space. We can put all of those. Why don't you put the aerial shot back up, Beth? We pretty much grow our whole winter crop. Kind of give you an idea of the difference. All of the rooted geraniums that we sell in the winter all fit in this space right here. So that's the only propagation we use for the winter geranium varieties. Out here in the lab greenhouses, which, as I say, now come down to here, that's where Martha does all of the breeding of new varieties. It's where we culture all the stock and start the nucleus stock every year. So what Martha's crew has just finished doing is going through, culturing all of the stock, starting them out as cuttings, and sterilizing those greenhouses all down. So she's actually got all of the new geraniums started out there for our 08-09 winter stock production. So she's always about a year ahead in the lab than the rest of the greenhouses are. So we have all of these greenhouses right now are empty. They're full of pots waiting to be planted up with 4-inch geraniums for our spring crop, which will start this weekend. We have all of our stock geraniums in this area and this area, and that's what we take the cuttings off of all winter long to produce all of the rooted and unrooted cuttings. After that crop goes out, then we plant all of this with the 4-inch annuals. And then out into the hoop houses, we do some of our 6-inch jumbo annuals, but pretty much, those pretty much go to landscapers.
Seeing as how I was so late, and I apologize. Did you cover like heating the buildings and things like that? I'm just curious.
Heating is a lot of oil and very expensive. Yes, we have all, out in this area, are all of our underground storage tanks for oil. So we basically have the capacity, if the oil is available, to fill up during the summer months and buy in enough oil to heat us all winter long. This past summer, we weren't able to get that much oil in.
But if you do greenhouses, you have new heaters or new heating systems? Or
No, all of the heating system, all of the boilers are in this area here that heat the whole acre.
And then the original ones from some time ago?
The original ones from the fire are still there. They've just been refurbished. Yeah. This new section out here, we do have a separate boiler room for, and they have their own heating systems. And one of the things that we did when we added on these 2 acres of greenhouses, we have another head house here that connects the 2 ranges, but this has its own heating system, its own office facility, restrooms, and everything. So if we ever wanted to curtail back, we could easily close all of this and just run the 5 acres again. Or we could always rent them out if we wanted to, if we ever wanted to back down, you know, in size. So it was purposely designed that way.
Have you got into cloning at all?
We haven't gotten into cloning at all, but I'll defer to the lab person.
We have done tissue culture, growing plants in test tubes. We did it for about 2 years. It was more as disease reduction or elimination as opposed to propagating that way. Some plants more readily propagate through tissue culture or micropropagation, growing and storing in test tubes. Geraniums are much easier to propagate by cuttings and rooting or direct sticking them into soil. We went through a 2-year process and did stop doing it, but we still do a culture indexing program where we test the plants. The plants from test tubes is a wonderful idea. It's just very labor intensive and very expensive.
Some of the most expensive geraniums you could buy. Not very cost effective.
Do you have special names for any of these?
Yes, my father, and I don't know, maybe my mother knows the answer to it, as to why Dad named everything in kind of colonial times. So we have Patriot, we have some of the early ones are Mayflower, Miles Standish, Puritan, Quaker, Samaritan, Abigail. Then as we started having grandchildren for him, there's one for each of his 4 granddaughters, Beth, Olivia, Amy, and Ann. And then we got into, you know, a little bit of the Native American names with Redcoat and Cherokee. Pocahontas was one of the old ones. Then we get into, you know, things like Abigail. Then we get into Faith, Hope, Rebecca. One of our reds since 9/11 is Freedom. So they all pretty much do have a meaning.
And we have dogs.
Oh, and we have Dot. We have, and I did bring a sample of Dot. It's a very single blossom. I don't know if you can see it. You can walk around afterwards, but it has a very distinguished dark eye to it. So that kind of started our Dot series. So we have Dot, and we have Lavender Dot, Rose Dot. It's different variations, different shades of the blossoms with an eye on it. We've also started one of our first series is Mystical. The Mystical geranium varieties are all dark leaf geraniums. And I have one of them here tonight. You can see that it's a little bit more compact and has much darker foliage, and they don't grow as fast as the other geraniums. One of the things that we look for when we're breeding geraniums is garden performance. It's one of the things that we always look for that our competitors hadn't in the years past. They were breeding more for the European-style geraniums, which were more compact. And we feel that the geranium should be more of the focal point of the gardens versus being the border plants. The impatiens and petunias should be your border plants, and the geranium should be a more vigorous plant. So we're always looking for good garden performance plants. But the Mysticals are a dark leaf, and they are more compact.
sources?
Good old town water. We pay a lot for water. That's really what it is. We do have drip irrigation where we have all of these 10-inch pots. That one's a 10-inch pot over there. And we have drip tubing going down them. So when we water, it's not a lot of overhead watering, especially in the winter. So just the pots are getting watered. The water isn't going everywhere. In the spring, we have overhead watering because we have to water a lot of 4-inch pots, which you can't do on a drip irrigation. So that's more overhead watering and concentrated right on the benches.
Yeah, I was wondering about, with the issues of water shortages and things like that in the area and drawing rights and now, are there any issues that we
They haven't been so far. No. I mean, I know the government's looking at it more and more as to, kind of doing these water bans or determining how much, a person can use, but they can't shut it off for agriculture. But we have looked at, water retention, capturing rainwater, the circulation in the heating system, continuously circulates, so, we feel that we do a pretty good job of capturing the water. Well, thank you very much, and feel free to look around at the geraniums. We brought several different shades to show you that spring is coming.
Is that a Patriot over in that corner?
Huh?
Is that a Patriot over in that corner?
That one, I believe, is Freedom.
Freedom.
That's very red.
That's almost a true red.
Yes.
Is that almost a true red? Thank you. Well, you guys just let me know what that true red is.
It sounds like
We're going to say that you said so.
if you could solve that riddle, it sounds like you could sell $1 billion.
We could. We could.
Does it match the Cardinals' robe?
Does it match the Cardinals' robe?
No, it didn't.